Now the politicians are discussing the upcoming transfer of governing power in the former Burma.
For nearly an hour, Aung San Suu Kyi held talks with President Thein Sein. Discussions were, according to his spokesman, focused almost exclusively on the process of transferring power smoothly and peacefully. Then in the afternoon, Ms Suu Kyi met Min Aung Hlaing, the commander-in-chief of the army. The photographs show them smiling and jovial, but this is now Myanmar's most important personal relationship. Ms Suu Kyi is hoping to persuade the Burmese military to step back from politics and allow her to become president.
That's BBC's Jonah Fisher. Raising the stakes in Moscow's spat with Ankara, Russia's top military brass now accusing Turkish President Erdogan and his family of personally profiting from oil trade with ISIS. Erdogan strongly denies the allegation. News and analysis at townhall.com. For the first time this fall, most elementary school students in Washington State's Marysville School District are getting 40-minute weekly computer science lessons as part of their core instruction.
It's part of a growing effort throughout the country to expose more public school children to computer science, even as early as kindergarten. Supporters say computer science teaches children to think logically, be creative, and exposes them early to the technology which will drive their future. Critics are concerned about the rush to technology, arguing kids don't need to learn it so early.
Correspondent Jeremy House. Former National Security Advisor Sandy Berger has died. He helped to craft President Clinton's second-term foreign policy, later got into trouble over mishandling classified documents. He served as White House National Security Advisor from 1997 to 2001. Berger died of cancer this morning at the age of 70. More on these stories at townhall.com.
People in Chesapeake and Hampton Roads have come to expect the finest Italian food at Spaghetti Eddie's. In addition to great lunch and dinner served daily, this fine establishment caters to and can host your party. Call 484-7301 for their Taylor Road location and call 410-5500 for their restaurant in Greenbrier. For more, log on to SpaghettiEddiesPizzaCafe.com.
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Find them on Facebook and visit them on South Military Highway in Chesapeake and Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth, Monday through Saturday. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 545-3573 today. Chesapeake, Virginia, 1650 AM WHKT presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick and at GJBTV.com. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
Thank you very much, Ken Johnson. Glad you're with us.
Thank you very much, Ken Johnson. Glad you're with us. But we have a substitute today who's a regular right here, Courtney Banks. How are you, Courtney?
I'm good. For it to be 70 degrees outside in November. Ooh, December.
Honey, it's December now. Jeez. Come on. Like you just said, it's 23 days before Christmas. But anyway, this is Sports Scene right here as well every Wednesday from 12 to 1, an interview show right here on News Talk 1650. Also, tunein.com. Type in WHKT. Tell your friends about 1650 on Twitter, at Greg Bick, Sports Highlight, GJBTV, at HROnlineMall.com. Thank you to our military each and every day for what you do. Great guest lineup as well. Tony Lombardi from Russell Street Report will be talking the NFL and Baltimore Ravens, which we carry right here on the game as well every time, all the games right here on 1650 with the Ravens and also the Admirals too. Guest lineup presented by as well as Spaghetti Eddie's. Phone line presented by HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit for the holidays on HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Sponsors this month for me are Fink's Car Care, Me Hogar, Crawl Space, Spaghetti Eddie's, and for more, log on to GJBTV.com. Hit the YouTube link for archive shows. We'll be hearing some restaurant testimonials a little bit later. Again, this is Sports Scene every Wednesday from 12 to 1, live on the radio on 1650, tunein.com. Type in WHKT with Courtney Banks in for Ken Johnson, Greg Bicouvaris. Stay tuned for our featured guest, Tony Lombardi, after these messages.
Mi Hogar is your restaurant for the finest Mexican cuisine in Hampton Roads. At Mi Hogar, everything is prepared fresh in a casual atmosphere. Enjoy traditional favorites such as quesadillas, tacos, burritos, and fajitas, as well as refreshing beverages. Mi Hogar has 2 locations, 4201 Granby Street in Norfolk and 801 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake. Call ahead at 640-7705. At Mi Hogar, there is something for everyone.
Nor'easter season is here, so don't get all wet. Protect your house. Call Crawl Space Door Systems at 363-0005. Reduce your flood insurance, reduce the threat of mold and insects, and save energy. Crawl Space Doors, air vents, flood vents, vent covers, and fans can help you stay dry or get you dry quickly. Contact Crawl Space Doors for more information at 363-0005 or online at crawlspacedores.com. Stay dry, my friends.
Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio.
Turn down for what? Turn down for what?
All right, back live right here on Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us right here with Courtney Banks right here at 12:09 up until 1 o'clock. Don't forget the Sports Philosophy Show right after this right here. Of course, we've had sports highlights on nnpstv.com, an interview show I've done since 1992. Way back in the early part of the decade, we had Tony Lombardi on. He's been on with me on radio shows as well, including on this station from Russell Street Report, the editor-in-chief, all about the Ravens. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Greg, and yourself?
Very good afternoon. Of course, Courtney and I were just talking, just a few more weeks before Christmas, but I think people are still getting over that Thanksgiving kind of like turkey hangover.
Absolutely. Tryptophan out. They're trying to get it back together again.
It's very confusing. It's very confusing. You had football on Thursday, then you have it again on Sunday. Then, of course, tomorrow's Thursday again. There's more NFL, just NFL galore. Let's do a little quick bio blast for yourself. You grew up as a big Colts fan. And of course, you're very involved with your 24/7 stuff. I know that was really relevant for you several years ago. You really started the Ravens 247. Tell me how that's evolved into what you're doing today.
Well, it actually started off as a hobby, and I felt like at the time the Baltimore Sun wasn't really covering the Baltimore Ravens the way I wanted them to be covered as a fan. And I remember driving to Ocean City, Maryland, and when I got down there, I picked up a Sun paper. It was like in July. And, the Ravens were coming off a big season that was, 2001. They made it to the playoffs, won a divisional game, but they got knocked out by Pittsburgh in the subsequent round. So I go to look for the Ravens and what they're doing with training camp, and there wasn't a word written about the Ravens. The only thing I could find was all about the White Marlin Open in Ocean City, and it was driving me nuts. So I said, you know what, I would love to read about the Ravens 24/7. And then it dawned on me, hey, why don't I do something with that name? So I did, and I put it together as a hobby, and people started following it and subscribing to it like a newsletter kind of thing. And then it grew into a website, and one day some guy reached out to me and said, I'd like to advertise with you. And I hadn't even thought about that. It was just a pure hobby of mine, and then it just evolved into a business. So, we've now been covering the Ravens for 12 years or 12 seasons, and we've just started back in 2013 a sister version of what we do with the Ravens with the Orioles.
It seems like that 247 is big on the Twitter, though, with a lot of sports teams.
It is, and I'd like to think we were ahead of the curve, but we aren't as big as some of the 24/7s that are using it. So therefore, it looks like we're kind of the copycats. When in fact, I think we were one of the first to use that 24/7 logo. The name of our company is 24/7 Network. So we've been around for, like I said, 12 seasons, and we're going strong and looking to build upon it.
Well, you talk about you should have talked to the guy from The Prophet and had your thing franchised, so you could have been on CNBC.
I know. Tell me about it.
There you go. I mean, it's a whole different world now with the digital age. Talking to Tony Lombardi, talking NFL, talking Ravens. This station carries the Ravens games and the Admirals right here on News Talk 1650. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us up until 1 o'clock. It's 12:12. All right, 20-year history of the Ravens. And you and I have talked on radio, we've talked on TV, how this team has evolved as a franchise. Sure, they've won 2 Super Bowls. But this year at 4-7, with a lot of stars out, we know Flacco's gone for the year. It's a really dismal start, although they played every game very, very close. You can't say they're a horrible team. They just have a very bad record. How are the Ravens today as a franchise in Baltimore, let's say, compared to the Orioles? I think that's a fair start. Now, 20 years in, they've won 2 Super Bowls. They've been irrelevant. They don't have the relevant stars, though, like they've had in the past.
That's true, and I think as those stars have come and gone, I think the team is struggling to find an identity, because the Ravens were known as like these bullies, these very physical defenders, and they controlled the ball on offense with the running game, and just didn't turn it over all that much, and it turned into a lot of success for the team. But because of the fact that they're a 2-time champion in the 20 seasons that they've been in Baltimore, and they are more engaged in the community than, let's say, Peter Angelos, the Ravens are king in Baltimore. There's no question about that. And I think there's a lot of frustration with the Orioles. They got into the playoffs a couple of times in the last 4 years, and people seem to like that. And there's a lot of fans in Baltimore for the Orioles, myself included. But I think at the same time, that because of the level, the consistency of winning with the Ravens, I think that that's one of the reasons why they're king, and the way they operate and run their organization.
Yeah, talking to Tony Lombardi right here on Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us. And, of course, the Ravens play right off exit 51 and 52 on 95 North, and we had former Colt on last week, Laird on as well, and the Redskins are on exit 17. Normally, it's the Ravens that are always relevant in December, not the Redskins. But I'll say this, the Redskins are playing very, very well right now. They're playing buttoned up at home. They just have trouble on the road.
Yeah, they're one of the surprises, no question about it. That NFC East is an interesting division. You have a team with a sub-500 record that leads the division, and that's always interesting to see going into the playoffs, because as we've seen before, all you need to do is get hot at the right time and be healthy at the right time, and teams can go on the roll, go on a roll. And the Ravens have done that twice, and we've seen the New York Giants do that a couple of times. So you've got to punch your ticket to the dance, and once you're in the dance, anything can happen.
Go ahead and promote your Twitter handle, Tony.
Russell Street Report.
Very good. At Greg Bick, at Sports Highlight, at GJBTV, and HR1LineMall.com. How relevant are the Ravens as a franchise? I mean, Ozzie Newsom's been there forever. There's a lot of consistency there with the ownership. Back in the day, the late Modell owned them, of course, and now Bisciotti owns them. But it always seems like they're not the sexy pick anymore. They're not the national flavor of the month. They just got a game bumped from NBC, pushed to Fox next week against the Seahawks at 1 o'clock, which I know Courtney's a lot happier about, because, Courtney, that game now is at 1 o'clock. You don't have to work here at night on a Sunday night. So, and here's my thing about the whole day-night scenario about football, Tony. You and I grew up watching games at 1 and 4, and of course Monday Night Football. They don't think about the fans at all. Who is going to go to a Sunday night game, at 8:30 on a school and a work night, freezing, sitting in the stands? It's all about TV, and I really think, TV is always going to be king, but I still think most fans enjoy the tailgating at 1 or 4 o'clock or 4:25 than they do a late night winter game.
Well, there are the diehards that they'll be out there no matter what time kickoff is, and they'll be tailgating no matter what time kickoff is. But I hear you. I prefer 1 and 4 o'clock games myself, probably because, as you pointed out, that's what we grew up on. But I think with the NFL, they're so see-through. There's no mystery behind the curtain. They're all about the Benjamins. They're all about making a dollar, and I think that everything that they do is driven by profit. And it's interesting that they're a tax-exempt organization, but the NFL is just all about money. And as you pointed out, the TV ratings are paramount to their success, and therefore It's not about the fan. It's about the Benjamins.
You did an email and you did some blogs on how popular the NFL is. Well, let me ask you, how popular do you think it is right now? Of course, on TV, it's off the hook. I still think it's way more popular than college football. I think, that's the worst thing that could ever happen to college football is on a Thursday night. You have the NFL competing against it because even a Jacksonville, Tennessee game will outdraw most sporting events on TV, whether it's football, basketball, or whatever. But what are your opinion? How popular is the NFL, and is it losing popularity?
It's extremely popular, the most popular game in the country, and I know they're trying to take it global by spending all that time and money over in Europe with the London games and whatnot. But I think it'll be really interesting where the NFL is in, let's say, 10 or 15 years. I think it is declining in popularity amongst the fans that made it what it is. And what I mean by that, Greg, is the NFL is so tied right now to fantasy football. And I think as a result of fantasy football, the numbers that the TV, audiences, that comprise the TV audience, I think that those are still on the rise, but they're on the rise for the wrong reasons. And what I mean is that you have people that are tuning in to the NFL Red Zone. And what do you get when you go to the NFL Red Zone? Scott Hansen's there talking every 15 minutes about how we are commercial free. Well, if you're commercial free and you are owned by the NFL, how is it that the TV network or the advertisers for the TV ads how can they get behind those programs if you are in fact commercial free? Mm-hmm. All the other games that are really declining in entertainment value because of the play on the field's declining, the officiating is horrendous, and the stoppages are so frequent that people, I think, are losing interest, and they jump over to the red zone because the action's nonstop. But when they jump over to the red zone, they're not seeing the Toyota ad, they're not seeing the Budweiser ad, and so on and so forth. So at some point in time, I think that those sponsors are going to say, hey, wait a minute, the way fans are consuming this content now is different, therefore maybe my budget should be changed in a different way. And I think that could impact the NFL. Also, the amount of focus on concussions, and it's going to really hit the fan when this movie is released on Christmas Day, Concussion. It's going to bring to the forefront how the NFL has been withholding information relevant to the future lives of the people that play the game. And when that comes out, it's going to cost the NFL hundreds of millions of dollars for one. But more importantly, I think in the long-term aspect of the game, the moms and dads who are at home thinking about putting their kids into sports, they're going to see this and they might say, you know what, little Joey shouldn't play football. I should have him focus on lacrosse, or I should have him focus on basketball or baseball, because as we've seen, David Price, for example, signs a $217 million contract for 7 years. The way I look at his career, he's going to make $2.1 million per win if he's as successful the next 7 years as he's been the previous 7 years. So maybe moms and dads at home are thinking, I want to focus little Joey away from football because he might get a concussion. And the more that happens, the less talented the pool of potential future players is going to be for the NFL.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, you look back at the generation way before we were born in the 50s and the 60s, they barely even had, any proper equipment as far as face gear, shoulder pads. It was almost like kill the man with the football. I remember my dad would play football back in the day for Newport News High School without even face mask gear. They would get their teeth worked on all the time. Now at least they've got the proper equipment. But I was at the Rams-Ravens game a few weeks ago working for Fox, and, you see the poor Rams quarterback stumbling, barely able to walk. They put him back in the game. Same thing with so many. And Flacco, of course, he had a different type of injury. But it's like they have these specialists on the field, but they still don't see it. That Rams game baffled me a few weeks ago.
Yeah, when Roger Goodell is going to be defending what they're doing with, prioritizing player safety, they're all going to point to that game and say, how can you say that with a straight face when this is going on? And with being a defender today, it's made it very difficult to defend in the NFL anymore, because now the strike zone has been lowered from around the shoulders to the waist, and when these guys are flying around like they do, how many times are people getting hit really hard in the legs? And I've asked a few NFL players this. I said, would you rather get hit in the torso, in a blind hit, or your legs? They said torso any day of the week, because you take out my legs, you may take out my career. I might just get a concussion if you take me out from the shoulder. So there's so many injuries in the NFL, and those injuries are also contributing to the decline in the quality of play.
We're talking to Tony Lombardi. Of course, Tony, I always ask you this. Are you in any relation to the great Vince Lombardi?
Well, I have an uncle, a grandfather, and a cousin named Vince, but it's not that guy.
Okay, very good. Still, you can always pretend like that's my distant uncle down the road. Of course, he did coach.
It's possible. You never know.
He had some great games with the Colts, that's for sure, back in the day. But
absolutely, legendary games.
Of course, yeah. And let me ask you that too about you see the Colts. They still, no matter what they're doing, they still seem like they're always in the race for the playoffs. They're not as a strong division as the Ravens are, but the Colts, regardless of who they have at quarterback, they find a way to win. With the backup quarterback.
Yeah, they're getting it done right now. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of talk about Chuck Pagano moving on after this year, because there's a disconnect between the general manager and the owner and Chuck. And I don't know how you can ask for a better guy for the last 3+ years than Chuck Pagano. I mean, I think he's done a great job there. So I think with them leading the way with Matt Hasselbeck and winning all 4 of his starts and keeping in contention there in that division, I think that's a testament to the qualifications of both Chuck Pagano and Matt Hasselbeck as a backup.
Yeah, they're still a big TV draw, the Colts are, no matter when they play. I don't know if it's that great steakhouse they got there, St. Elmo. It just rubs off on their football team. They just keep winning and winning and winning no matter what. All right, let me ask you, Ray Rice is the news for all the wrong reasons the last several years. Now you don't barely even hear his name anymore because you heard the Hardy situation, how bad domestic violence is. Will you ever think Ray Rice will get a second chance to play in the NFL? Because now, at his age, with being idle, to me is the worst thing. I don't think he's going to play again. I don't think many teams still want to gamble on him at all.
No, I think that with that position in the NFL, it's been so downgraded in terms of level of importance that with the spread offenses, teams seem to think that they can get a guy in a 3rd, 4th, even undrafted, 3rd, 4th round or undrafted, and plug them in and be successful. And I think that you could look around the league and make a case that is true. So why take a risk on a guy who that there's going to be some public relations backlash? And I just think that teams feel that there are plenty of other running backs out there that can do what they perceive Ray Rice could do, and as a result, he's not going to get a second chance. And that's a shame because, I know Ray Rice a little bit. I'm not defending what he did at all. It was a heinous act. But I think that since then, he's done everything possible to bring more attention to this issue in America and try to find ways of curing it and correcting it. And he couldn't be a more exemplary person since that incident, but he still doesn't get the opportunity because the value of that position is so downgraded in the NFL. And as you pointed out, his age and the mileage on the tires. So, if you're Greg Hardy and you can sack a quarterback, you'll get 2nd and 3rd and 4th chances. But if you're Ray Rice, you only get 1.
Right. Michael Vick, he had a second chance. Of course, what he did was very heinous as well. But he's 35 years old, and he did sub a little bit for the Steelers this year. But, age, father time doesn't help anybody, no matter what your situation is. Talking to Tony Lombardi, we're talking NFL, we're talking Ravens. So, what's the future of the Ravens? Going next year to their 21st year, obviously this is going to be very difficult to even sniff the playoffs this year. But next year is going to be a lot on the line. I mean, Billick won a Super Bowl, and they let him go. Harbaugh, of course, has got a lot of goodwill there. But ever since he had that testy interview earlier there during the preseason, it just seems like it's just been kind of a negative karma this year with the Ravens. I don't get it. This should be a 20th year celebration. Ray Lewis, of course, on ESPN, he kind of distanced himself from the current team. He's very distant when he talks about the Ravens. You see it even this past Monday night when they took on the Browns and they beat the Browns. But, they had Ed Reed there recently celebrating him as well. But, embrace the Ravens, but are the Ravens going to embrace themselves? What do you think the future is going forward?
Well, I think that there's, first of all, a lot of smart people in that building in Owings Mills, Maryland.
Sure.
And I think that they'll get it done. You pointed out earlier that they've been together a long time, and I think that being together a long time allows them to to get stronger collectively and individually. It's hard to pinpoint, what went wrong with the Ravens in 2015 on any one particular thing. Of course, injuries have played a major factor in their demise this year. But then I think also that they have been so true to Ozzie Newsome's best player available and right player, right price credos that I wonder if those are just so entrenched in the organization that maybe they need to be shifted a little bit. Mm-hmm. What does best player available mean when you're on draft day? Does it mean on your board? And who's comprising that board? Are the scouts that put that board together, are they not seeing the new NFL the same way as other teams? For instance, if you look at the Ravens, and I noticed this back when the very first preseason game I watched, it was the Hall of Fame game that featured the Steelers and the Vikings. And when I looked at the Steelers, because we're always focused on the Steelers as Ravens fans because it's a big rivalry, but the one thing I noticed about the Steelers was the speed that they had on the field. Because I had been out there watching the Ravens practice and OTAs and training camp, and I was thinking, the Ravens don't have close to this kind of speed. So they have undervalued the speed positions at corner in the secondary and obviously at wide receiver. I think they need to get better at those positions in order to be more effective going forward in today's NFL. So I think they've got the ability to do so. I think they've got the talent and they've got the cerebral power, if you will, because those guys have worked together a long time and they're really smart guys. I think they'll get it together. I don't know that 2016 finds the Ravens going deep into the playoffs, but as we've seen in the past, Greg, you can get back into the playoffs pretty quickly in the NFL because of the parity.
Yeah, and the Ravens had a lot of star names in the past, too, with that parity you're talking about, with Lewis and Suggs, of course, and Rice and Ogden and so many different players have come and gone from there. Even some of the linemen as well. I mean, who are Kamar Aiken and Eugene Monroe and Rick Wagner? Of course, Yonda's been there for a long time. Crockett Gilmore. Some of these guys could walk into a mall and nobody would even recognize them.
That's part of the problem too. The identity. They don't have that star power anymore, and I think the Ravens fans have come to appreciate those guys even more now that they're gone. It's like anything. I guess it's human nature, Greg.
Sure.
Once you have something, you don't appreciate it as much as you probably should have when it was there until it's now gone. And I think that's definitely the case with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed.
Very good. All right, Tony, go ahead and plug whatever else you want to. Russell Street Report, of course, on Ravens 247. You do a great job. Of course, you're also on the radio. Go ahead and plug that as well up in Baltimore. People can hear you online.
Yeah, I'm always on with Scott and Jeremy, who they've been voted by whoever votes for you guys on radio as being the top 50 in the country. Scott Garceau and Jeremy Kahn on 105.7 The Fan. You can hear it online, and I'm on usually every Monday right after the Sunday games at 3:05. So you can check me out there. And they also tweeted out the sound bites from that little 15-minute segment. So they can hear me there, and occasionally on the weekends on 105.7 The Fan as well.
All right, I always have to ask you this question. 20 years, celebration for the Ravens, of course, 2 Super Bowls. Are they as popular as the Colts were after the Colts' first 20 years in Baltimore?
That's a really good question, and I probably answered it different the last time than I will this time. I think the 2 world championships makes you popular, and again, when we talked about human nature, I think human nature is also, what have you done for me lately? And we won it yesterday, and we want it now, and I think that the Ravens have delivered that. So I would say that with the way they run the stadium, the type of stadium it is, where the stadium is located, and because of social media and the media in general, the Ravens are more popular than the Colts. I don't know that the diehard section of fans is as strong as the Colts because people lived and breathed that. Barry Levinson could attest to that in his movie Diner. So I think that the diehards maybe were a little stronger with the Colts, but I think the general population is more engaged with the Ravens.
I agree too. Just because of the social media and all the TV and the radio as well. So Tony, thanks a lot. All the best to you in Baltimore. I got family up in White Marsh, so it's a great area up there. Some of the best Italian restaurants up there in White Marsh, as you well know.
If you're in the area, hook me up or ring me up and we'll get together.
Very good. Also, mention to Bisciotti, too, that they should do like a Colts homecoming like the Redskins did when Kilmer was there and Art Monk and, of course, Doug Williams and Joe Theismann and Sonny Jurgensen. It was just legendary that in 20 years that the Ravens should do something to celebrate the legendary Colts like Burt Jones and so many others.
That would be awesome to see because, as you know, when you enter M&T Bank Stadium, there's that big statue of John Unitas that everybody rubs that boot for good luck as they enter in there. So I think that would be embraced by the community for sure.
All the best, my friend, and have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. Tony Lombardi right there. Greg Bicouvaris. This is Sports Scene up until 1 o'clock. We'll take a short break, come back with Brian Parsons from WAVY-TV 10 after these messages.
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Find them on Facebook and visit them on South Military Highway in Chesapeake and Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth, Monday through Saturday. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 545-3573 today.
Mi Hogar is your restaurant for the finest Mexican cuisine in Hampton Roads. At Mi Hogar, everything is prepared fresh in a casual atmosphere. Enjoy traditional favorites such as quesadillas, tacos, burritos, and fajitas, as well as refreshing beverages. Mi Hogar has 2 locations, 4201 Granby Street in Norfolk and 801 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake. Call ahead at 640-7705. At Mi Hogar, there is something for everyone.
Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by Hampton Roads Online Mall.com.
All right, Greg Bicouvaris along with Courtney Banks. Ken Johnson's off today. Glad you're with us right here on Sports Scene every Wednesday, 12 to 1. You're home for talk radio in Hampton Roads, giving you a local choice during a convenient hour when people are riding around all over, up and down the East Coast, listening on TuneIn.com. Type in WHKT. If you missed a show, go to GJBTV.com, hit the YouTube link, shop on the Marketplace sponsors on the homepage, as well as Hampton Roads Online Mall.com. 23 days before Christmas, you got to shop on Hampton Roads Online Mall.com. Of course, Redskins improving their first place in the NFC East. Got a big game against the Cowboys Monday night. William Mary still in the FCS against Richmond, a rematch. Old Dominion, of course, done for the season. And their basketball team, ironically, is struggling a little bit. UVA, Virginia Tech, coaching changes, of course, galore. And we'll talk all about that coming up with Brian Parsons after this short break.
Good Italian food, daily specials, and a place people enjoy is Spaghetti Eddie's. Indulge in your mouth-watering pizza, pasta, subs, salads, appetizers, and desserts. Open 7 days a week. Log on to SpaghettiEddiesPizzaCafe.com and visit them at Taylor Road and on Eden Way North in Chesapeake for lunch and dinner. Like them on Facebook. Italian food you can count on is at Spaghetti Eddie's. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio.
All right, save the date each Wednesday for the best back-to-back talk shows in Hampton Roads. Sports Scene at noon, followed by the Sports Philosophy Show at 1 o'clock, coming up with Daryl Cummings. Jack Ankerson is doing the public address for the Old Dominion women's basketball team right now. Both heard on News Talk 1650 right here and in TuneIn.com by typing WHKT in the search box. Interact with me at Greg Bick on Twitter. We've had him on Sports Highlights. He's been on Sports Scene, good friend of mine. Also used to work with his brother doing high school basketball games as well as football. Let's welcome Brian Parsons from WAVY-TV 10 Fox 43. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me. Great being back on.
Very good. Happy Wednesday, and we'll get you in the studio here a little bit after the first of the year. Well, let's talk about the Old Dominion Monarchs. So close last week. I was following the game from afar at Williamsburg when they were taking on Duquesne, but Bobby Wilder's team has a losing record, but nothing to be ashamed of. Still, excellent year.
Yeah, I think when you look at the fact that it was senior day, okay? Mm-hmm. There were 12 players playing their final game for ODU. 12 that were suited up. He's returning 100 players, Bobby Wilder is next year. So It's a very young team. They lost to the teams that were a lot better than them, and they lost by a big margin. But they won 5 of the games against teams that were inferior, I guess you could say. UTSA, Charlotte, UTEP, Norfolk State. The games that they won, they probably should have won, and the games they lost, they probably shouldn't have won. So I think all in all, I think 5 and 7 was pretty much what I kind of had them at. I may have actually had them at 4 and 8 if when I did the picks before the season. But they're a young team. The ODU fans need to be patient. This move to FBS is a tough one, and the seniors that they got rid of were basically they're cycling out the FCS players that they had, and he redshirted like 35 different players. They got to find a quarterback. I tell you that, Bobby Wilder will tell you that he'll be the first one to tell you that.
Yeah, you talk about attrition, quarterback changes. I mean, graduation still, it's still excellent mark, of course. And, they're not going to always have as many home games as they did this year either. But the big thing is always going to be winning on the road. I think that'll be Old Dominion's biggest challenge as the years move forward. I think the roster will be just fine as they get the proper components. I think also the defensive side, it got a lot better this year, too. I was at the Wayne Mary game this past weekend against Duquesne. I felt like I was at a basketball game.
Yeah, I wasn't at that game.
Yeah.
So the game wasn't even broadcast on ESPN.
It was on ESPN3. It was on ESPN3.
ESPN3. But even still, the NCAA, at this point of the season, when they get into the FCS playoffs, they do not allow local affiliates to shoot the game.
Right.
So we had to get the highlights off of the satellite coordinates from that ESPN provided us. But watching that game, Tribe was down 14-0 in that game, right?
Yeah, they spotted him 14 points, and Duquesne just came back.
Yeah, pretty impressive, Jimmy Laycock. He's been to the semifinals twice. I'd love to see Coach Laycock ride off into the sunset with a national championship before it's all said and done. That's for sure. But I'm really excited about what they're doing with the stadium there at Zabel Stadium with the upper deck that they're adding, and I know you will appreciate the fact that there will be a new press box at the Zabel Stadium next year.
I felt like I was in a war zone in the TV booth up there this past week, walking through all the center blocks. But I'll say this, too. Kudos to the Old Dominion fans, too. They will sell that place out no matter what. Brian, the atmosphere in Williamsburg this past weekend at the game for a playoff game, yes, it was Thanksgiving weekend regardless. I felt like I was at a library at Study Hall. It was that quiet. I mean, it was that quiet there.
Well, they do have very high academic standards.
Yes, they do. All right.
They're studying.
UVA is looking for a coach. Virginia Tech, and let me get your thoughts, too. I really want to pick your brain about Virginia Tech, too. Of course, they got a new coach, and Fuente, and Foster is going to be retained. But here's the thing. You know this better than anybody by covering high school and college athletes. Hey, coach, we used to do it this way. They're going to a lot of the seniors and juniors, even the sophomores and freshmen, are going to confide in Foster because he's that familiar face. It's almost like, let's have a one-on-one. I don't like this guy. I don't like what he's doing with spring practice. There's going to be a lot of that going on because, to me, it's best just to clean house because a brand new coach who keeps a presence on like Foster, I mean, it's going to be good for a little bit, but still there's going to be players that are going to confide in Foster that will not confide in this guy at first.
Yeah, but I think a lot of times, too, with college, when you're dealing with so many players, like there's not a lot of crossover between the defensive guys and the offensive guys. Fuente is going to be pretty much in charge of the offense. He's going to turn the defense over to Bud Foster, and that's who they're going to. That's the player. That's the coach that the defensive players are going to be closest with.
Sure.
And that's not going to change. And if the kids aren't buying into Fuente, then they're going to be gone. I mean, it's that simple. Whit Babcock made a big investment in this guy, and if the kids aren't going to buy into what Fuente's selling, then they'll be gone.
Yeah, I'm thinking
it's that simple.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, Beamer probably would have liked his son or Foster to get the job, but that doesn't always happen that way. Just look at what's going to be happening at UVA. They were 4 and 8. They're looking for a new coach. You and I predicted London, even back when I worked at the game, would be gone several years ago. I mean, this is
right.
Now, how about Old Dominion basketball? Here's what I'm concerned about right now. Yes, they're 3 and 4. It's early, but Conference USA is not the Big East. It's not the ACC. It's not the Big Ten. They're not going to get a whole lot of at-large teams. The fact they're losing so early in November and December. It's almost like the premonition is like you're going to have to win this tournament just to get to the NCAA tournament. Even let's say they still have a good January and February. It's almost shaping up like that because you know how tough it is to make the big dance.
Well, last year Old Dominion was literally the first team out of the NCAA tournament, if you remember.
Right.
Literally the first team out, and that was made official by the NCAA. This year, they're going to have to go down to Birmingham and win the Conference USA tournament to get a bid to get a bid. I mean, that's that much we know. You lose 4 games in a row at this juncture of the season, they're not going to get in that large bid. But they're going to have to go down to Birmingham and knock off UAB, who's actually favored to win the conference, who went to did they go to the Sweet 16 last year? I know they at least won a game.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Conference USA is the teams that are the upper half of the league is pretty good, but the cellar dwellers are awful. I mean, here's something for perspective. Southern Mississippi, who 3 years ago was an NCAA bubble team, Donnie Tyndall was the head coach. He left to go to Tennessee and got fired from there for sanctions and things like that. And some of those sanctions there were some sanctions at Southern Mississippi too. Southern Mississippi has fallen off so bad, they got blown out against a team called William Carey, which is in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It's an NAIA school. It would be the equivalent, with all due respect, of Old Dominion losing to the Apprentice School.
Right. Which they might have done in their first year of football, but luckily that didn't happen because they didn't play each other. But exactly.
We're talking basketball.
I know. But look at William Mary. They beat NC State. Look at Radford. They beat Georgetown. So you've seen some really crazy things happen in November and December. William Mary's playing better without Thornton. Who would have thought that?
I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked because I respect Tony Shaver so much.
Yes.
And I follow that team closely, and they've got players on that team. They've got a bunch of 6'5", 6'6" guys that know how to play the game of basketball. They kind of all play the same position. They don't really rebound well, but they shoot. They defeated Old Dominion last night,
right,
without making a single three-pointer.
That's unheard of, and that's what they're known for.
That's what they're known for. I can't believe it. ODU's struggling in basketball right now.
They really are. I think, Coach Jones had his health issues, and of course I think, he finally, the staff is, getting focused and reset, but they're going to have to because conference play is coming up right around the corner. Let me leave you on this note. Who's going to become the next football coach at Virginia?
That's a very good question. Here's a name, and this is based on absolutely nothing, and I doubt UVA would take a chance, but one name that somebody eventually is going to take a chance on Lane Kiffin. He's the offensive coordinator at Alabama now. He's kind of ruffled some feathers in some of the places he's been to, but the guy's an offensive genius, that's for sure. It's the UVA job. Here's something to ponder. When George Welsh left and they hired Al Groh was not the first choice. Do you know who the first choice was?
Yeah, it was Sandusky.
They offered the job to Jerry Sandusky.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So they dodged a bullet there, and then they offered the job to Mark Richt, and they weren't able to make that happen. So maybe they go after Richt again. But there's a lot of scuttlebutt that he would go to Miami because he's a Miami alum. I think UVA's a great job. It's a wonderful gig. It's great facilities. You can recruit. Sure, the academic standards are a little high, but last time I checked, they're pretty high at Stanford and Duke, and they're doing well. So it can happen at UVA. But I don't know. This is closed lips. I don't know what direction you're leaning in. It would just be pure speculation at this point. But I don't think you necessarily have to go with a big-name splash. I mean, a lot of times some of your best coaches or your best choices are maybe that offensive coordinator from an SEC team that we don't even know about right now.
I think they need to hire the former Georgia coach Richt today. That's my opinion, what they need to do. But you mentioned, the Penn State connection. Welsh was an assistant with Paterno from 63 to 72, and that's why Sandusky's name was mentioned back then.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, because Paterno was so close to Welsh, and of course he recommended to Welsh, and of course he would have recommended Terry Holland. That was some of the talk back then. Thank God that did not happen, though. But, I mean, look at Penn State. They're not as relevant now without Paterno there anyway. So, but anyway, it all comes and goes. And finally, the Redskins. I mean, you got to be happy. Most of their games are on Fox, and we were had a really good game this past weekend against the Giants on the TV side. And they're tied in the NFC East. They split with the Giants, and of course, it's going to come down. What do they do against the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Bills here coming up?
They've got two more against the Cowboys who are struggling. But wouldn't it be typical for the Redskins-Cowboys rivalry for the Redskins to lose one of those games, even regardless of who's a quarterback for Dallas? It's just tough for the Redskins. I mean, they're kind of like Old Dominion in a way where they're kind of losing. They're beating some of these beating teams they kind of should beat, but they're getting waxed by New England and Carolina. So they're a middle of the road team. That's what they are. What's their record? 5-6. Mm-hmm. Bill Parcells says you are what your record is. and it's not going to take much to win the NFC East this year. So if they can just hang on, and Redskins would actually host a playoff game for the third time in the history of FedEx Field.
Talking to Brian Parsons from WAVY-TV 10, Fox 43. Brian, I think it's going to come down to what they do against the Bears on the road, because the Redskins have done nothing on the road this year.
Literally, they've in fact in 2 years they've only won one game on the road under Jay Gruden.
Right. Brian, thanks for all that you do, my friend, and look forward to seeing you here in the studio in a little bit after the first of the year. And as always, go ahead and plug what you guys do over at Wavy.
Yeah, man, we got a busy day, busy week. Today I'll be making the rounds, hitting up some high school football coaches. I'll be talking to Richard Morgan from Oscar Smith, which just upset Ocean Lakes. Huge upset. Big talker of a story. Everybody was talking about that one. I'll be going over to Indian River, too, to talk to Glenwood Fairview, which is the Indian River, not Southampton. And I want to also ask these coaches, has Justin Fuente called you guys yet?
Yes, exactly. That should be interesting, too. We'll see. And, of course, Oscar Smith, I mean, they're their most relevant team. They've been on national TV. And when you think of high school football in Virginia, the first name that comes to my mind is now Oscar Smith. It's the days of Hampton and Phoebus are long, long gone, although they're still very good. All right, my friend.
Hampton was good. Well, and tonight, don't forget, 10:45. On Fox 43, 15 minutes, the Fox 43 Sports Wrap.
You guys are the best over there, that's for sure. All right, my friend, we will talk to you after the first of the year.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Brian. Always a pleasure. All right, let's welcome Sonny Dearth from the Daily Press, dailypress.com, before we go to our business spotlight scene. Sonny, you got to like the way Wade Mary and Richmond going at it again in the FCS playoffs. This time we'll be back at the familiar UR. Richmond won the first game 20-9. What do you expect this coming Saturday?
I expect it to come down to the final play, to be very competitive. I thought offensively the Tribe probably played its worst game of the year against the Spiders, and fortunately they picked it up last weekend despite the turnovers. Their defense has got to be way better than it was against Duquesne.
Absolutely, of course. And the good thing for Richmond is they got a week off to button up. Of course, they're going to be a little bit more healthier and so forth. They're playing at home, which is a big convenience as well. Although it's the Tribe fans just don't draw as well as Richmond fans do, but that's not a problem anyway. So, what are your thoughts about James Madison? You got to be happy about them as an alumni.
Oh yeah, I thought they did a good job to bounce back after the season-ending injury to Bad Lee, who's probably the best quarterback they've ever had. The offense seems to be doing pretty well under Brian Shore. They'll have a challenge from Colgate, which is a really good rushing team. I saw a little bit of the Red Raiders game against New Hampshire via ESPN3, and they were able to control a line of scrimmage pretty well against one of the best traditional programs in the championship subdivision.
Yep. All right, I want to pick your brain real quick about Virginia's football team. What are your thoughts? Ask Brian Parsons. I mentioned Rick would be a good choice, the former Georgia coach. What are your thoughts about the Virginia opening?
I definitely think it's Mark Rick's job if he wants it. It's a matter of does he share the vision that Craig Littlepage and John Oliver have. If not him, I'm not sure exactly where they're going to go, but there are a number of promising young assistants out there. But I still think it's Mark Rick's if he wants it.
And finally, on a high school note, Phoebus beating a lot of teams that they would never play against in the past, former AAA versus AA, but regardless of their division, Phoebus still gets it done.
Yeah, Phoebus is the only Peninsula team left in the playoffs of the 24 total that remain, and they're playing some very unfamiliar opponents to them. Tab, York, and Poquoson. It's kind of like Phoebus joined the Bay Rivers District, and I tell you what, that game against Poquoson was fraught with all kinds of drama, a real novelty factor. Two teams that I don't remember ever playing, and it came to overtime. Fantastic ball game.
Yeah, they would have never. I mean, back in the mid-'90s for a while, you saw Tab was in it with Hovis and Gloucester, of course, still. They were a former Bay Rivers team. Of course, Lafayette played the Peninsula District when you first got to the Daily Press. But thank you so much, Sonny, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Greg.
Thank you. All right, Sonny Dearth from the Daily Press. We'll take a short break, come back with our business spotlight scene. This is News Talk 1650, tunein.com, type in WHKT. Greg Bicouvaris along with Courtney Banks. This is Sports Scene.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 1
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Find them on Facebook and visit them on South Military Highway in Chesapeake and Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth, Monday through Saturday. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 545-3573 today.
Nor'easter season is here, so don't get all wet.
Protect your house. Call Crawl Space Door Systems at 363-0005. Reduce your flood insurance, reduce the threat of mold and insects, and save energy. Crawl Space Doors, air vents, flood vents, vent covers, and fans can help you stay dry or get you dry quickly. Contact Crawl Space Doors for more information at 363-0005 or online at crawlspacedores.com. Stay dry, my friends.
Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio.
All right, back here to Sports Scene. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us live up until 1 o'clock on News Talk 1650. TuneIn.com. Type into WHKT. That's WHKT. Let's welcome Brenda Tusing from the Royal Chocolate, a regular sponsor as well. You can see her link on HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. We take care of Brenda and Terry. She takes care of us. How are you, Brenda?
I'm great today, Greg. How are you?
Yeah, Courtney and I were talking off the air. Like, we're having like Thanksgiving turkey hangover here. I mean, like this is a confusing week. Like, we're expecting something to happen tomorrow, Friday, but it's still 22 days before Christmas.
I know. It's only 22 days before Christmas. But yeah, you're right. That swing week in there where you're coming off of one high and getting ready for the next one.
Well, let's talk about how does that affect the chocolate world.
The chocolate world is quite busy. We do a lot of corporate gifting. So, corporate customers typically like to give out their gifts a little earlier in the month, and sometimes they like to do Thanksgiving gifting and stand out from the crowd a little bit. But so we're putting together a lot of corporate orders, getting those ready to go out the door, and as we do that, of course, people are coming in either placing their Christmas orders. We do a lot of shipping, and we also deliver locally. So some people are coming in now before it gets too crazy, and they'll place orders and arrange to have them shipped, delivered, or even picked up at a later time, which I think is always a good idea. So yeah, we're really busy. The store is beautiful. It's just so filled with gorgeous products, and we have our tree up, and Santa stopped by the other day, so it's just fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, the RoyalChocolate.com, folks, 557-6925. Please listen to this. You've got to buy your candy from the Royal Chocolate. It's December. What are you waiting for? 23 days before Christmas, although it's still warm right now. It's funny.
I know, and I think sometimes people think, well, I have to get it, closer to the time, and that, as long as you're not going to eat it, you're fine to buy it now. And like I said, you can always place an order, pick it up, have it shipped or delivered later. And then, this is also the month we do our Silver Saturdays. And our first one is this Saturday, December 5th. So we'll be offering $2 off of our gourmet apples all day until 6 o'clock. And there's I think a limit of like 6 of those deals per person. And it's also our last of the year make your own chocolate bar. Nice. So you can drop in between 11 and 2, and kids and adults can make a beautiful chocolate bar and decorate the box that it goes in. So kids come in, sometimes we'll make it around the holidays as a gift for like mom or dad or a grandparent or something like that.
Well, give us your address and phone number and all the hours.
Okay, sure. We are at 164 Central Park Avenue. We are in the Virginia Beach Town Center, 757-557-6925, and we are open Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Sundays we're open 12 to 5.
You really have something for everyone, don't you, Brenda?
And every price point. I mean, good chocolate can be expensive, but we have really exceptionally nice gifts starting at $5. I mean, that's a wonderful price point for the people in your office or the person that does your hair or whatever it might be. Hey, we have these really cool things now. They hang on to a wine bottle, and there are 4 wonderful truffles in there, $6.75, and just jazz up your gift of wine.
Oh my goodness! Just
perfect.
What's better than candy and to cheer somebody's mood up as well?
Chocolate solves everything, they say.
It does. And peanut butter, too, a little bit with that.
Yeah, throw in some peanut butter. Now you got me.
All right, well, go ahead. It's theroyalchocolate.com. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
Great, thank you,
great
Greg.
play. Say hello to Terry, and we'll talk to you soon.
I will. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. All right, let's get to What Teased Me Off.
What Tees You Off? Presented by GJBTV.com.
Courtney, you have the honors. What teased you off?
Inconsistent warm winter weather.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like Christmas right now.
It doesn't feel like Christmas, but it's cold at night. It's cold in the morning, cold at night, 70 degrees at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
70 degrees right now.
Now, why can't, and you don't know whether to turn your heat or your air conditioner on,
Exactly.
and that's why people are getting sick right now.
All the time.
And it's like Christmas music so early. Ken and I talk about this all the time. We'll get to what teased me off right now. All right, let's go ahead and interact as well, Courtney. Having to turn down one event, wishing you were at the event you turned down.
Yes.
Like I've got to be at a social function this Saturday, turning down a paid job to be there. And if it would have the other function would have started an hour earlier, I could have been to both. Oh my gosh. And you know how social functions are. They're fine for the bride and the groom,
Yep.
but it's the people that you sit next to there that you do not like.
Do you just want to you have to make unreasonable small talk? How's the kids? If you don't know if they have kids, how's work? How's the weather?
And the answers are short. Oh
Right.
my goodness. How about late responses to something? I mean, come on, folks. We got phones now. There's no excuse for that.
Yeah.
Holiday traffic on Sunday coming back from Washington was pathetic. People were stopping in these gas stations, long lines to go to the restroom. Cluttered space. People like their space. You go to City Hall and pay your real estate taxes. People are right on top of you. How
Right
about
there.
giving somebody a little bit of elbow room?
Yeah, I don't need to feel your breath on my neck.
No,
Thank you.
or tap me like that awkward tap. Phony people, you know how they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, too well.
Yes. How about fake greetings from people that you have to say hello to that you don't want to say hello to?
Yes, you just say hello and try to walk back quickly. Don't ask me how I'm doing. I'm fine.
How about the creepy old men staring through the windows?
Yes, that is always uncomfortable because you don't really want to look over, but it's like you can't help it, like your body is drawn to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Creepy.
you and I click really well. We're going to do the show again next week as well. You might have to replace Ken for a while. But anyway, all right, Courtney, thank you so much. I want to thank our great guests today as well, Tony Lombardi, Sonny Dearth, Brian Parsons, Brenda Tusing. For more, go to gjbtv.com, hit the YouTube link for archive shows, shop on HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Great restaurants, retail services, and marketplace on HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Sports Philosophy Show is coming up next with Daryl Cummings. For Courtney Banks, I'm Greg Bicouvaris. We'll talk to you soon.